Today, our panel is Meet the Media. We ask that you hold all your questions until the end of the discussion, as we will have a designated time for Q&A with our panelists. I'd like to introduce to you Charles Felix. He will be our moderator this evening. Charles serves as a member of our leadership board. He is also the publisher of Cannabis News Florida. Cannabis, in case you don't know what Cannabis News Florida is, it's a publication that provides both local and national news from leading authorities about medical and business developments in the medical cannabis industry. It has been providing an essential service here in Florida by helping educate our physicians, professional healthcare providers, and patient population with information about medical marijuana, which historically has not been widely available in the state of Florida. We also have a star-studded panel for you tonight. We have DeRay Ross, who is the president and CEO of DeRay & Company. It's an award-winning public relations company that has many successful clients in the cannabis and hemp industry. We also have Samantha Gross joining us tonight. She is a politics and policy reporter with the Miami Herald. She has been reporting on cannabis since joining the Miami Herald now for several years, and she's one that I follow closely as she always has really good information about what's going on regarding the legislative matters involving cannabis. We also have Charles Warner, who is the editor-in-chief for Cannabis and Tech Today, which is a publication focusing on technological advancements, business innovations, and the science of the cannabis industry. I got lost on their website for a long time. It is a wonderful publication, so I suggest checking it out. Very interesting. We also have Jonathan Small, last but not least. He is the editor-in-chief of Green Entrepreneur, which is a website and magazine focused on multiple facets involving the cannabis industry. And with that, I turn it over to you, Charles.
Oh, good. I was just typing a message. Well, welcome. We actually got to talk to each other yesterday a little bit about the media industry, the news industry. And I thought we'd get just a brief comment, maybe 1 to 2 minutes, 3 minutes, from each of the panelists to try to understand their perspectives on the medical cannabis, hemp, and CBD industry. So I'm going to start off with DeRay. DeRay, tell us a little bit about you and your company, and then we'll kind of go into a question and answer area.
Sure. Well, I am extremely honored to be among this panel. I think I'm the only person who's not an actual journalist. So I'm a publicist. I do PR, public relations, and within that is a variety of things under that kind of banner of communications and marketing. So I'm very different in the folks that are on this panel in that I'm the one that gets to work with them. I'm honored to work with them on a daily basis and work with them very closely to help get our clients into their outlet or their newspaper or whatever outlet they may be, or online, whatever, on a podcast, whatever it may be. So it's definitely a fascinating time to be in this space. And I'm providing the perspective of the PR person looking for the publicity and how to work with the press. So thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to this next hour.
Samantha, you want to jump in?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha Gross. I'm a politics and policy reporter at the Miami Herald. This is not my first C-Lab event. I'm really happy to be back with you guys. I started covering cannabis at the Herald when I was hired to cover the 2018 midterms, and I was assigned to cover Nikki Fried. And I think that, the importance of cannabis around her campaign really convinced our legacy newspaper to actually pay attention to cannabis and watch kind of develop. And so that's kind of how I got into reporting on cannabis in the space. I'm excited to have a conversation with you guys.
Thank you. Charles, you want to jump in?
Yeah, hey everybody. Super excited to be here. I'm the editor-in-chief of Cannabis and Tech Today. Over here at our company, we also do a couple other tech magazines. So we're pretty familiar with residential tech and innovation in tech. We cover like the CES type things. But yeah, we're just super excited to be here. We think that this is the most incredible industry, and the relationship between the media and the industry and the events is super, super important as far as how we're driving everything forward, inspiring and informing. So anyways, super excited to be here. And I actually have a house in Florida. So even though I'm in Colorado, my heart is still in Florida with all of my C-Lab Florida people.
Great, thanks. Jonathan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan Small. I'm editor-in-chief of Green Entrepreneur. I come to you from Los Angeles, California. Green Entrepreneur is part of Entrepreneur Media. And I think most of you are probably familiar with Entrepreneur Magazine, entrepreneur.com. We are part of the same family. Green Entrepreneur was started about 1.5 years ago. Entrepreneur was interested in getting into the cannabis space, and lo and behold, they hired me and a team of, a small team of editors to run a website and a magazine and a podcast and a bunch of webinars and all sorts of things we're doing on the site. And we are really focused, we are really more of a B2B publication. We are focused on entrepreneurs who are looking to get into the cannabis industry, or entrepreneurs that are already in the cannabis industry that are just looking for a leg up on the competition and looking for some advice. And that is why I am here, and I'm so happy to meet all of you, and it's nice to be in Florida.
Great, thank you. DeRay, I'm going to go back to you for a second, because we hit this topic yesterday, and then kind of jumped to everybody because you are the person who is on the other side of the equation, as one might say. So tell us a little bit about what you believe is the difference between paid and earned media.
Sure. So the difference is really, one, you're actually paying for, which certainly in this industry is much tougher given the lack of being able to purchase ads. But one is paid and one is earned, which is more editorially driven, which the panelists here would be the ones that would provide that type of coverage, where it's a third party endorsement or third party coverage of your product, your good, your service. And so there certainly is a big difference between them, but these days there's definitely a merging of the two. And you're basically talking about paid for being advertising and earned being public relations or publicity.
Great. So in talk, we'll go to one side of that, which is what I would say the earned media side, relating to everybody here. 3 people, actually myself, 4 people have publications that DeRay probably wants to get information into all of them. So we'll put her on the spot again, and to say 2 things. So the other panelists can think about it. I'm going to ask DeRay what the idea of writing a press release, okay, from your standpoint, and then I want to go to everybody else and say, okay, from that standpoint, what are you really looking for that's going to catch your attention and not just say they're just trying to sell a product? DeRay?
I think, whether it's a press release or a pitch or really anything that you're doing in what we do on our end at DeRay & Company is we're looking to tell a story, and we're looking to stand out. It's your point of differentiation. What are we doing that's new or unique? And why should the person on the other side receiving that email or that pitch, why should they cover our client? Or why should they cover, if anybody who's watching, if they're writing their own releases, why should they cover your company or your product? And so aside from having AP style, which is what we use, Associated Press style writing, which is succinct and spelled correctly and grammar is correct. That's like, I would leave it up to the panelists to really say how important it is to them. But in our office, it is multiple people have eyes on proofing things and items that go out of the office. So I know that's a big no-no is to send something that is laden with grammar and poor spelling. So I would say off the bat, make sure it's well written, but that you've also identified what is your angle, your unique point of differentiation, and does it all make sense? Do you have a quote from your CEO or your key individual in there? Because many times, especially now, the media does not have the time to do an interview. And sometimes they will just pull the quote that is located inside of the press release and use that for their story. So the best thing to probably take away, at least this is how I feel, is that we're trying to do everything we can to make the journalist's job easier and to help them tell our story if they choose us and they're willing to cover our clients. So I think that's really the key thing from what we do in our office, and making sure that things are on point, the clients are represented properly, multiple people are looking at things before they go out, and certainly pitching it appropriately. And when we do pitch it, we have to make sure that we're pitching the right person and it's the right type of story that they would cover. So really doing our homework to the people that we are sending it to, and what we are sending, making sure that it is well written and properly positioned. Great.
I'm going to jump to, because I know Samantha really isn't on the selling side of the newspaper. So I'm going to jump to Charles and then to Jonathan, and tell me what your, how many do you get a day, Charles, for instance? How many press releases are you receiving a day? And it can be, try to keep it away from the thousands, but how many do you get a day?
I'm going to do like Michael Scott on The Office and say I get 8 emails a day. No, it's a lot more than that. And it's not just me, it's my editors, right. It's the writers, we really get a lot of them. So I would just say as something to help everybody that's here right now, we have a barrier to entry for our print magazine. There's only so much you can put. So we've got one rule here. It's got to bring value to the audience. If it doesn't bring value to the audience, it's probably not going to get any play over here.
Now, Charles, can I stop you for a second? Can you define value? Because I think people look at it totally different. What do you define as value for the people out there?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it depends on, who the editor is. But for us, does it inform people? Does it inspire people? Is it backed by facts and science? That's kind of how we look at it here. I mean, we can do fun stories and we love that, but ultimately, does it bring value to the audience? If I'm running a puff piece that somebody has asked me to run as a favor and it doesn't bring any value to the audience, I'm going to lose the relationship with my audience, and that's not worth it to me. So we've got to make sure that it brings value. It's entertaining, it's well written, it's something that can add to the conversation, and that matters to probably every publication here.
Would you also add to, and Jonathan, would you also add the concept of education? Are you trying to educate your readership about something?
I think the how-to stories are sort of bread and butter at Entrepreneur. How to do something better, how to be a better leader, how to be a better manager, how to deal with the crisis like we're in right now. There should be takeaway advice in almost every story that we read. People are and I think another question, I think adding value is a fantastic barrier entry. Another one is, who is the audience that you're pitching here? Who is the audience for the publication you're pitching? The audience for the Miami Herald is different than the audience for Green Entrepreneur. And so you can't just send the same press release and hope for the best. You have to tailor your pitch to the different, audience here. So again, our audience is entrepreneurs, very much like the people on this call, people who are in the industry or want to be in the industry. What do you want to learn about? You don't want to just hear about how great somebody is doing, or how much money they're making, or how successful their business is. You want to hear about why their business is successful and what you can take away from their experience and apply to your own business. So there has to be that piece of it. There has to be what we call in the magazine industry service. And that's a very important element that I think a lot of people forget sometimes when they're pitching.
Right. Samantha, so tell us from your standpoint with the Miami Herald, somebody sending you information. Obviously, you get more than just cannabis, CBD, or hemp. But tell us what kind of, all of a sudden you read and you say, yes, I need to move forward with this. What makes that happen for you?
Yeah, I think for me, the best pitches are the ones that are really well researched, someone who I can tell knows what I report on. It's a lot more than just sending the same press release to other people. I like to know that it's something that they really want in the Miami Herald for a specific reason, because they know what kind of work I do. And I can tell, at DeRay, there's a girl named Sam Mosters, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. And she always is like really good about reaching out and saying, I will talk to you just the Miami Herald. You know, I have this client who is doing this cool thing, and usually it has to do with some sort of policy change. That's the kind of thing I write on. And I think just like knowing who you're pitching is really the most important thing. It sounds really simple, but it really makes a difference. And I get a lot of press releases addressed to like Stephanie, like, well, like if you're not gonna get my name right, then I think that's, you know, there's a low bar there. So, but I think it's important to make things personal.
So, and taking that maybe a step further from, and we'll maybe do from a starting off maybe with Samantha. We'll go back to you on this. What is the best practices you use in going into your head, going into your thinking? What's going to make it work? So, best practices for you to do. Obviously, if you don't do your job at the Miami Herald, there's somebody else to step in and do it. So you have to handle with best practices and being able to really manage that information. So what do you do as best practices?
Yeah, I mean, I think I follow a very like code of journalistic ethics that are really close to my heart, which is, you know, making sure that all my stories are always balanced. And, you know, if I'm going to take a pitch from someone, for instance, I'm always making sure that I'm balancing it with maybe the other side of the story. If we're talking about policy change that people are really upset about in the industry, then I'm going to go to the government agency that's making those changes and try to kind of get some balance. So my best practices, you know, are really just making sure that my reporting is really accurate, it's balanced, I don't show any bias. That's why I don't take a lot of product pitches, because I'm never trying to convince anyone of anything or sell anything. Yeah, I try to just talk to real people. And I think a lot of times through, you know, pitches, I'm able to connect with real people. I'll say, well, I would love to interview the CEO of whatever brands that you're pitching me, but could you connect me with maybe some of their clients, or can you connect me with someone who, you know, is like on the ground, like doing the thing. And so I think, yeah, I think that everything's about balance and making sure that stories are whole and fair and, you know, accurate.
So I'm going to ask you kind of $64,000 question and put you on the spot. What about your people who are out there selling advertising and say, well, I got this great client and we'd love to have a nice story about him? How do you handle that?
So our advertising side of our newspaper is great, and they're always out in the community. I think you guys have probably seen them. They were at the C-Lab conference this year. You know, the advertising side and the editorial side has a pretty strict firewall, and you know, if they get pitches for stories, maybe that conversation will happen, but it really stays pretty strict. We have our sponsored content in our advertisements, and then we have editorial side of our newspaper.
Great. Perfect. That's all we need to hear. Charles, what about yourself? You got a magazine, you got to pay bills, you got to look at stories, you got to do a lot of else. How do you maneuver? How do you navigate the waters?
It's a really good question, because especially in 2020, you know, media has changed, gone a lot away from print, and now is a lot more digital. You see a lot of native advertisements. You know, you really see a lot of these big magazines out there finding a way to, you know, still keep that firewall that Samantha was talking about, but also making the news look more like news as it's coming from certain advertisers. But we're the same way over here. If it's sponsored content, it's marked as sponsored content. If it's brought, you know, we really keep it separated. But at the same token, we don't feel like an advertiser should be penalized.
Right.
Because that they are an advertiser and all of a sudden we could never run a story about you. We kind of go back to that first thing we said. Does it bring value to the audience? And as long as, you know, it's a good story and it's something that we can vet, we can check it out and make sure it's not a bunch of hype, you know, we'll put them in the mix with other people. But it's not, you know, it's a very delicate balance. And I think that if you do it right, you can have a great relationship with your advertisers and actually help them more, because people don't read advertorials.
Right.
You know, you can tell them a different way to get their story out that's going to get more reach than an advertorial, because most people I know, they flip right past those.
Right. And Jonathan, tell us a little bit about, you know, you taking that sailboat through the waters.
The murky, rough waters of advertising and editorial. Well, I've been in this game, you know, I look like a young man, but that's just a California sun. But I've really been in this since the print magazine days of the 90s. And I worked at Glamour magazine and all sorts of places. So I've been battling advertising people for many years. and I love and hate the sales team, mostly love. But, we do keep it very church and state. Of course, they always want us to write about brands that they're interested in having as advertisers. And there's ways that we can figure it out. Maybe they want to sponsor a podcast, or they want to, be in our spotlight section, which is sort of a native advertising section within our website. So there are creative ways to for advertisers to get involved editorially with our product. But, it really works better for everybody if it's church and state. I mean, even the sales team, they don't want us to just, it just ruins the whole credibility of the publication, when it's so obvious that a story has been paid, to be placed in a place, and it doesn't help anybody. So I think there's a respect on both sides about keeping that firewall there.
Yeah, because one of the things that I do, and DeRay, I'll get to you for a second, but since I'm in the same boat as the other three, one of the things I look at is if it's doesn't bring value to the audience or educational, even if it's a sponsor, you don't run it. And I think part of it is trying to convince them that people don't want, as Charles said, advertorial. They want to be educated. They want to know something they didn't know before they picked up the newspaper. And if you can't give them that, then you're basically just producing an ad rag, in my opinion. DeRay, so tell us, so you got a client, and your client says, DeRay, I need to get some stuff out there, but I got no money to pay for advertising. What's my best bet?
Well, that answer is longer than this whole entire webinar. On the PR side, we're looking at a variety of different things. Certainly since COVID, there's a lot of corporate social responsibility opportunities for, many of our clients and brands. And so that's kind of a whole thing in and of itself, but, not specific to COVID. I mean, we have to, what I love about one of the things I love about being a publicist is that we get to go in and work in industries that, I get to peel back the layers of the onion. I have to learn about that business. I need to know how all of it works in order to be able to package the story, package the press release, package it so that we're explaining it to the journalists that are on the panel and others, so it picks their interest. So we're looking at things and asking questions of our clients to try to help tell that story. So the questions that we have for our clients are more of what a journalist would ask. And sometimes they don't want to answer them in any industry, not even just, within this space, but we really have to dig deep. And so we have to understand what are their goals, what are they looking to do, what looks like a win or what looks like a great positive result to them, because I can come up with all day what I think the right answer is and where they should be. But the truth of the matter is, if that's not what they're looking for, then they're not going to be happy. So when we look at PR and what we want to help our clients do, it is not a one size fits all. It is a variety of different, I always say we have our toolbox and we have all of our tools in our toolbox, and we use different things for, at different times. And some could be advertising, obviously on the PR side, and just a variety of things from, social media, obviously events when we can do events, affiliate marketing. There's so many different tools in the toolbox, and it really depends on what is the client looking for. And we work with private companies, public companies. It runs a big range. And sometimes it's about just launching a particular product or launching a company, or a company might be going public, or hey, the CEO would like to build their profile. So it really it varies depending on what the client is looking for. And of course, it is our job to counsel, to manage expectations, to explain why, like Samantha was saying, she's not going to cover certain things, and they want to be in the Miami Herald, let's say, and they need to be in there. And so we have to explain to them, okay, well, here's what this particular journalist is looking for. So what do we have? What can we get to them? What's coming down the pike that then could lead into the type of coverage that you're looking for? But we have to do our job and bring value to the journalists so they can bring value to their readers and to their viewers. So I hope that makes sense, but it's constantly evolving. So it's definitely not a one size fits all answer.
Okay. So
can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing we haven't said yet is, don't pitch a publication you haven't read. I think it's really important. It seems to be common sense, and I know we're all very busy, but if you do a mass, email and you haven't even read the publication, you're just kind of wasting your time. You're wasting the editor's time. So, become somewhat familiar with who you're pitching. I think it'll save you a tremendous amount of time and really make your job a lot easier.
Yeah, I see those come in all the time, and it's like, why are you even sending this to me?
Yeah, it just seems
it's like
it's not even worth anybody's time. So
no. So let's go ahead, Charles.
Oh, I was just going to add to what Jonathan said there. We do get a lot of emails, and our staff is busy. The time is of the essence. If you bait the hook to suit the fish and you've done your research and you go, hey, I see your next issue is going to be on outdoor adventure. I've got a really good fit right here for outdoor adventure. And you look through it and it's good, man, that thing's going to get fast tracked. Right. To the team for them to go do it, as opposed to that random, press release. So absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Bait the hook to suit the fish. Understand what they're trying to do and actually help them accomplish their goals of bringing good content while you help your client.
And one of the reasons why we all have editorial calendars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if I could add one thing to that for the folks that are looking to do PR on their own, and even sometimes we struggle with this. If you want the coverage and you've sent the pitch, you've done your homework, you've identified, you've read what it's about, you figured out who to pitch, you've pitched them properly with an appropriately angled pitch letter with a great press release that's going to hook them. And when they come back to you and they say, great, you've got me, you've got them, and you have to make this happen immediately. I mean, it's like, it doesn't matter if it's Friday at 5 o'clock before a 3-day holiday, you got to make it happen. And so it's kind of like Murphy's Law, the way I always experience it, that we could have been working on something for a while and now something happened and they want to talk to the CEO and they've just gone on vacation or it's a holiday weekend. And so you've pitched it, and whether it's us pitching or even if anybody who's watching and they're doing it themselves for their own company, you can't simply say, okay, I'll get back to you next week. I mean, the key thing to take away is immediately responding and asking, what is your deadline? Because you don't want to blow this opportunity, and you really don't want to upset the journalists that now you hooked and they're ready to go and you're not responding in a professional manner.
That's great. I wanted to cover 3 separate areas, and we talked about this yesterday. Medical cannabis or cannabis, CBD, and hemp. Tell us a little bit about Samantha, for instance. We'll start off with you. Which topic today are you more interested in relating to the Miami Herald that somebody can pitch you a story on, whether it be cannabis, CBD, or hemp?
Yeah, I think hemp right now is something that I'm really watching closely. April 27th was the first day that people in Florida were able to apply for a hemp license. And I've been really busy with covering the coronavirus like everyone else in our newsroom, but I've been like kind of on the hunt for like the first farmer in South Florida who's like going to get a license. And I think I've been really focused on that just because it's something new and everyone wants that profile, and I know that there are a lot of brands out there that are interested in getting in the space. But I think that hemp and, like the production of hemp and, companies looking to get into the market here to process CBD and things like that are interesting. But the new hemp licenses just being an up and coming thing and being something so new is what I'm keyed in on right now.
Good. I can get to the name of a farmer if you'd like. So.
Okay.
Seriously. I met him about a year ago. Charles, what about you? I mean, with the tech business, what's hot right now? The cannabis, CBD, or hemp, or all?
Yeah, CBD is so last year. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. CBD is cool. But, the cool thing about cannabis and tech today is that a lot of people ask, they say like, well, what does tech have to do with cannabis? And there's a lot of tech in cannabis. So, I agree with Samantha. Hemp is incredible. All the different ways we can go, industrial, all the different uses, but also, cannabis, more states coming online. And then there's all the ancillary stories around it, because we're B2B too. So it's all good stuff. I just think CBD's kind of died down a little bit. from all the hype last year. But who knows what's going to be the next hot thing.
Right. Jonathan, what do you? Yeah, I mean, from the entrepreneurial look, tell
Yeah.
us which one to invest the money in today, Jonathan.
Oh yeah, if I had that, I don't know if I here. I had that information. Listen,
Everyone listen closely now.
yeah, it's most boring answer, but it really is all of the above. I mean, we look at what are the new opportunities in the business, and that changes. The world was different 3 months ago than it is now, obviously. And I just was talking to a person, investor, and she was telling me about kind of where she sees all this going and kind of where she sees the new opportunities. And you'll just have to listen to that webinar. But again, that's what we're interested in. Where are the new opportunities? Where are the problems that need to be solved? And where can you, and how does your product, help scratch that itch and solve that problem? So it doesn't really matter whether it's hemp, CBD, or cannabis, or it just, as long as it's a new opportunity.
DeRay, tell us a little bit about. Just tell us about all your clients that are cannabis, hemp, and just list them out for us if you would.
Oh my goodness. Well, there are quite a few, and it's interesting because we're kind of throughout the whole process, right? So we have farms. Veritas Farms is a client that we've worked with. Actually, they were the client that got me into this space, which is fascinating, several years ago. So we've been honored to work with them. We still work with them, and they have a 140-acre farm in Pueblo. So I've been to it twice. It's a lot of fun, a lot of fun. And, and then we have a processing facility also in Pueblo, Paragon Processing. We have, oh goodness gracious. We also are I'm on the board of the Florida Hemp Council, and we worked with Samantha on a number of these stories between the Florida Hemp Council and Veritas Farms. We have another brand called Tanasi, which is out of Nashville, CBD brand. We also are helping to launch, which, for any of the entrepreneurs here that are looking to get into this space, it's called Natural Life, and they're actually a franchise. So they're franchising the whole concept. So if you want to get into the space and you don't know how to pick all the different products and you want kind of a turnkey business, they're launching their franchise as well too. And also we're now working with One Plant as well. So and there are others, but it's been a very busy time. And so from, CBD to, now working with One Plant, who has a lot going on as well too. It's under the same kind of, industry, but they are very different. And the way that we approach them has to be very different based on federal regulations, state regulations. And it's constantly evolving, which is what I love. And it's changed so much, obviously, since the Farm Bill, and, things continue to move forward. So it's been a crazy few years. And I'm really grateful to, the folks on the panel, to you, Charles, the MC, the host here. You've always been so supportive for our clients, and we appreciate that, because it really helps us. And we try to do our best to make sure that we're packaging the information as best as we can to you, and hoping to hook you all in to cover the clients.
Yeah. From a standpoint of a new business, and I'm glad you brought that up, DeRay, of people that are out here, whether you're into the business, you have a business, looking to expand your business, could be one of the reasons why you're watching tonight, is could each of you give a takeaway, a good takeaway to each of these people that may be looking to say, I want to advertise, I want to do PR, I want to make my business known and flourish and have cash flowing out of my pockets. And how's the best way to be able to do that by using all the media that they're watching tonight? So I'm going to start off with Samantha again. Samantha, so tell us about, there's a little guy out here, a little gal, a little guy that has a company, and they're really looking, they've got a great story, great product, great patent on something. Is that something that you'd be interested in looking at?
Yeah, I think that for me, as long as their story or their product falls into a bigger issue that I happen to be writing about, that I can kind of throw into a mix of other things, I think that it's always good to pitch. And especially, to read the publication and do some research first. But if you think it's a good fit, then certainly. And I know that Josh Ellenberg is on this call, and he's our CBD vertical representative for our advertising department. And we actually have someone who's focusing on that now, which is awesome. And I think he put his info in the chat. But there's other ways to get into the Miami Herald. I think we're looking to, focus on that. We're a legacy media outlet, but I think that, advertising opportunities are definitely presenting themselves. And I have a newsletter that advertises as well.
So how did, and I'm going to go back to you for another second, Samantha. So let's say it's not a complete story, and probably to everybody, it's not a complete story, but can be used as a great resource as part of a bigger story. How did it get their CV to you to say, listen, I'm an expert in this. You may not want to write about me now, but if this comes up, give me a call.
That is absolutely valuable. I keep a folder for sources for future stories, and I separate them. I cover a bunch of things. So I have prison sources, and I have my healthcare sources, and I have cannabis too. And those are people I go back to for time and time again. I think Dr. Barry Gordon's on this call too. He's one of those people who had reached out a long time ago, and now he's like my doctor source. And I think it is really valuable to just even offer yourself as a resource if you're an expert in something. Yeah, it's always really good. And I'm always
just don't use me for the prison story. That's all I got to say. Don't use me for the prison story. So anyway, Charles, what about yourself on that, Charles? Tell us a little about you have a good takeaway for somebody out there right now. They want to do business. They got to increase their business. It's a tech thing. How do they really get your attention?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say first and foremost, make sure that your business is tight. Make sure that you are legit. Make sure everything you're saying, you can do, you can back up. There's proof of concept. Really, I don't care how good your marketing is. If your business is crap and you don't have executional skills, you're going to have a tough time out there. Now, with that being said, I believe that everything kind of is like an ecosystem. PR, advertising, events, getting involved, putting yourself out there, putting your CEO out there. I kind of think it should be a mix. And I think that for most people starting a business, with an entrepreneurial mindset, they hustle. They know how to hustle with a business, and you need to hustle with getting the word out there too. So I truly believe a nice ecosystem, a nice mix of PR, paid, things like that. You don't have to go bananas right out the door with spending, but definitely spend some money and support. Don't just spend the money, support that newspaper or magazine or website. See what you can do, because honestly, there's a lot more you can do after you place an ad to activate it than just placing an ad, and you'll get a lot more value out of it.
Right. I echo that. Jonathan, what about yourself? Although you got all the money in the world, so you really got an entrepreneur, so you don't have to worry about it. So
yeah, I'm just living large. I mean, no, I'm sorry. So the question is,
what's a good takeaway for somebody? Somebody has a great story, young entrepreneur, just got a patent on something, thinks their business is going to flourish. They got like angel investors in there right now, and they're saying, I need to get this out so I can get that second or third round of financing.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the way you're trying to sell a customer. You're trying to sell an editor. What about your product is different than everybody else's out there? I get a lot of pitches for CBD products. This is natural, full spectrum. We use only natural. I mean, how many pitches can I get like that? So I'm probably not going to end up writing about that, but maybe there's a story of your founder, a sort of rags to riches story of your founder that would be inspiring to our audience. Or maybe there's another angle that you haven't thought about your product that just makes it a little bit different than everybody else's story. I mean, I've had, I'm interested in people who have taken their expertise that they learned in a different type of business. Like, let's say they were in a previous life, they worked for Chipotle or something, and then they took that expertise and they applied it to their burgeoning cannabis business. That's interesting to me, because you're applying lessons that you learned from sort of the mainstream corporate world, and you're applying it to cannabis, and it's other lessons that some other entrepreneurs might be like, wow, that's really cool. I hadn't thought about that. That's something that I could do. So, we're all about storytelling. Was mentioned earlier, and we are telling rags to riches, sort of interesting founder stories are really our bread and butter, but also, you know, what is it that I can learn from this example in my own business? So just something to think about. Yeah.
Okay. DeRay, you're back on there?
Yeah. So a couple of things, which I agree with what everybody else has said, but we get a lot of calls, thankfully, in the office, and I spend probably 50% of my time talking people out of PR because they're not ready. They don't have they don't have their product. They don't have their story together. They just aren't ready in whatever that means. So be careful what you wish for. If you want PR and you want publicity, you have to be ready for it and you have to be able to act on it. So certainly if we get coverage for our clients, we want to make sure that we are amplifying those stories and that we're sharing them, because obviously we know that these days that's what needs to happen. We know that we need to help drive traffic to the online stories to help you all as well too, that are writing it. And so we need to make sure that it's all together and that it's not a disjointed effort. And so it's like, be ready with all of that component, and don't do it kind of halfway. Be ready for, once you unleash it, be ready for it. And so a lot of people, it's incredible how many people will call and they want to do publicity right that second, and they don't even have a product, or they don't have their COAs, or they don't, and there are a lot of, the last thing I want to do is launch something and have a crisis on my hands. And so we have to do the due diligence for the folks that we're working with to make sure that they are tight, that they're buttoned up, they have their COAs, that that the story is really solid, and that they're ready for this, and that they get a bunch of orders online, can they fulfill them? Otherwise, this whole thing is really a waste, and it's not good. So I really think being ready for it and ready to move and to amplify the publicity is really, it's just critical from my end.
One follow-up question for you, DeRay. You always hear the, I guess it would be a saying or about, there's no such thing as bad publicity. Can you elaborate on that? Because people will bring that, I don't care, whatever it is, at least my name got out there, it's publicity. Can you elaborate your thinking on that?
I mean, my personal stance, and I'm a publicist, so I don't think any good publicity is good publicity. I think it has to be the right kind. Certainly, over my 20+ year career, I've dealt with quite a bit. If I could write a book and it wasn't confidential, it would be a lot of fun to do that and share the craziness, because just when I think I've seen it all, something else happens. But I don't subscribe to that. I think there are a lot of reasons not to. And, to put it into perspective, even in this industry, some people think and want an FDA letter. They want it and they go after it, and that's what they're looking for. And that is a marketing, perspective, a PR and marketing perspective. It's not one that I share. I don't subscribe to that, and I'm not looking to cause a problem. And in fact, we do everything to make sure that we're not making any claims, and we're not going to do anything that would upset the FDA. But I don't subscribe to any publicity is good publicity. So I just don't. I think it's not all good. You want to look professional, and you want your organization to look and sound good. And I don't agree with any type of publicity is good.
Okay. Anyway, I'm trying to look at the clock. Amanda, you want to come back on for a second? How are we on time? Amanda?
Having technical difficulties
Oh,
with
okay.
my video. However, yes, I mean, we would like to have a Q&A session. So if everybody wants maybe just to give their last final thoughts, and then we can see if anybody in the audience has any questions.
Great. Okay. Why don't we just across my screen, I'll start off with Jonathan, because you're closest one to me right now. You're actually sitting right next to me on the screen, Jonathan. So.
Yeah, well, I hope this has been, useful. I'm certainly, I hate to open myself up because we're all complaining about how much we get pitched, but I'm certainly very available to you to talk to, and certainly feel free to pitch me. One thing that we also look for at Green Entrepreneur is having thought leaders such as yourselves contribute stories to our network. And we have a CMS system that I can invite you into to contribute stories and for our review. So that is another way to get published on Entrepreneur. Doesn't just have to be a story that I or my associates have written.
Great. Samantha, I'm just going across my screen now, so.
I guess I will open myself up also. You can find me on Twitter, and my email and all my information is actually on my Twitter, which is Samantha J. Gross. I'm always willing to hear pitches, especially really specific Florida pitches for things going on here. And yeah, I think do your research and pitch me if you if you think it's a good fit. So.
DeRay, you're right next to Samantha.
I mean, if I can do anything to help anybody who's watching on the PR marketing side, if you have any questions that I might be able to answer, you can't pitch me because I'm not a journalist, but I'm happy to help weigh in if you have any questions. You can reach me. It's DeRay at DeRayandCompany.com. And I'm more than happy to help weigh in and provide any sort of insight that I might be able to share with you.
Okay. And Charles, yourself?
Charles and Charles. You
Charles and Charles.
You don't see that very often on the panels. Do Charles. Yeah, I just want to say that we really have, during this time right now, during COVID, we're just trying to take this opportunity to help brands right now that might be going through a tough time. It's a little bit chaotic. So we've actually got an outreach program. It's called Canatech Today, Canatech Tomorrow. And just simply, we're offering some consultations, some webinars, free job boards, directory listings. We want to help brands get through this time so that we can all come out on the other end, and go back to having events and things like that. So we're also looking for stories of innovation, or, like if your company or your brand is doing something to help out, we really want to look for some inspiring stories. So feel free to Google that. But we really are here for the industry. Without the businesses and the brands, we don't matter. Without the events, it's harder to get out. I mean, it's a symbiotic relationship. So we just want to try to give a little bit something back, and just know that we're here for you, like a lot of your other media brands that you're seeing here.
Great. And I'll kind of have the last word. I take that honor, having the last word. We'll go into the panel. Everyone here, if you don't know me, I'm the publisher owner of Cannabis News Florida. Also, my other publication, or the sister publication, is South Florida Hospital News and Healthcare Report. So my goal is to blend healthcare and cannabis together. I sit in a good spot because in the state of Florida, it's all medical cannabis right now. So one of the things that I look for is really educating physicians, whether they be cannabis physicians or not, to educate them about CBD cannabis within the industry. And the other thing, as Charles was saying, is that through my e-newsletter that goes out on Wednesdays, if your business was kind of hurt or closed for a period of time and nobody knows you're back open, or you have strict certain hours, or a lot of the MMTCs, a new delivery system, a new way to do it, send it to me. I'm not charging you for it. I'm going to throw it in my newsletter and tell the people what's going on and what's happening, just to keep people informed during this strange time of our life. So anyway, with that, Amanda, I'll hand it back to you, and I guess open it up for questions.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody, for participating. I really appreciate it. There was some invaluable information shared on the panel. If anybody has any questions, please just type them in the chat, or let me know that you have a question, and we're happy to call on you, and you're welcome to ask any of our panelists any questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Got to have one.
One
Barry Gordon
Just
has
the
to have a
one.
question. Barry, I'm going to call you out, Barry. You got a question? Now listen.
We have Brian Applegarth. He has a question.
Okay.
Brian, would you like to unmute yourself? I can try to do it.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
So it's good to meet all of you. I'm usually in California, kind of West Coast chat rooms. This is really cool to see some new faces in the industry. So my area of kind of expertise and focus has been cannabis tourism, or cannabis-related tourism, everything from replacing plastics and paper in hotels with hemp, to health and wellness with CBD, and what does the psychoactive component of the THC look like, and how it really reaches a bunch of different audiences. The last 4 or 5 years, I've been educating really travel and tourism kind of stakeholders of the state and speaking to different audience, from the hotel and lodging associations to destination marketing organizations, Cal Travel, Visit California, things like that. And there's really an inflection point happening with cannabis tourism. I'm on the brink of publishing a report with a really well-respected kind of cannabis travel data company. We've been working on this for about 8 months. And I feel like my career is at an inflection point. I am not technologically savvy. I feel like I need to do better at sharing kind of my work with the world and being able to amplify that, but I don't know exactly how to go about that. And I feel like right now I need to dial that in. So I've been listening and taking notes today. And if somebody was going to give me advice on immediate next steps, whether it's a press kit, like whether it's reaching out for PR support first, like what should my next 3 action items be to establish myself further as kind of a thought leader and a subject matter expert in the cannabis tourism niche?
Sounds like DeRay, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so you have these results, you have the survey results are ready to go. So, I mean, depending upon what they are, obviously you'd have to slice and dice the information to see what that story is that you can tell from it, that, you know, all of our panelists have said that they want. So I would try to look at the survey results to see what does that look like and what story can I tell? And I mean, ideally, and we just did this for another client who did a survey, and it got great coverage because it provided some great insight into what people were thinking and their habits and what their opinion was. And so if you can find a way to package and succinctly put together some of the top, top nuggets of information or the top takeaways from it, I would certainly put that into a press release and see how you can package that out to position you as putting this together as a thought leader. And in addition to, you know, the whole press release angle, certainly along with that might be some bylined articles that you might be able to author as a thought leader, maybe even talking about the survey results. But, you know, why did you put this together? Talking about a little bit about you and what your background is, what led you to these survey results. And so I think there are a couple different things that you could do, and certainly sharing those results in an e-blast and e-marketing. I think that's, fascinating. So again, I mentioned the tools in my toolbox. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to take that information, but I think once you've got it and you like kind of distill it down, then you can go out with it. So, I'll let the professional journalists weigh in on the journalistic aspect of it. But I think you need to take that information and kind of use it throughout.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Anybody want to jump in? Jonathan, Charles?
Well, I think we always love a good study, especially if the results are surprising and informative to the entrepreneurs out there. The cannabis tourism industry is a really interesting industry. We had a big story in the works right before the pandemic, and now I don't know what to do with that story because I feel like all the things that we talked about are probably not open right now, and so a lot of it is timing. Where are we now with cannabis tourism? How is that affected? I would love to write a story on how that's affected, how what's going on now in the world has affected the cannabis tourism, and what different companies in the cannabis and tourism space are doing to survive. That's a fascinating story that I would.
And Jonathan, something else interesting that most people aren't aware of is that the travel industry, obviously, in hotels has collapsed. So they're rethinking the funding model, which is kind of an assessment-based model. And when you start looking at cannabis as an essential service that thrives in times of crisis, there's this stability factor for economic funding. So as we rebuild the funding model for the DMOs, the destination marketing organizations, having cannabis at the centerpiece with other essential businesses as being inclusive and included in that new framework provides some economic stability just from that vantage point. Yeah. So there's some really cool nuggets that have popped up also with drive-in visitation happening and cannabis being an untapped, uncommunicated kind of tourism destination asset. There's an opportunity here to speak to kind of 120 miles out as we kind of re-engage with travelers. So there's a really cool story happening, I think.
I know we got to get other people, but one thing I would advise you, and it's something that I think everybody will give. One thing I tell people who are pitching me, think of it as like, sometimes it's just like a list. Like, what are the 5 nuggets under the theme that you are talking about? Like, what are 5 things we need to know right now about cannabis tourism, or 5 things opportunities that are right now that are happening. You know, try to frame it that way in your mind. It just helps organize them, because this helps you focus your stories. I find when you do it that way, bullet it out.
I would agree. I would agree.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Okay.
Just to help out our panel, I'm going to start adding the people with questions to the screen, so the people whose video you're seeing have questions.
Okay, Barry, you want to come in?
Yeah, hey, Charles, thanks for the call out, and Samantha, thank you as well. Listen, Samantha Gross has done such a fantastic job down at the Miami Herald from so many angles, and I just want to give a shout out to all of our journalists in general. What a lot of people don't know, I was actually a communications journalism major at Ohio State myself before going into med school. And if we lose our freedom of the press, guys, we're sunk. So as Samantha knows, I shout out to her every time, and all my other media types, be it, you know, Eric Sarkisian or, you know, whoever they may be, and Derek Ham. So, but here's my point, everybody. Let's not lose sight of what went on in the last legislative session and what's going to go on in the next legislative session. Representative Rodriguez is going to become Senator Rodriguez, and we're going to have a new Speaker of the House in Chris Sprowls. So it's not going to be an atmosphere up there that's going to be favorable for cannabis. So my suggestion is let's continue to hit the media with what our issues are as we get into the committee season, which we know is October, November. It's job protections, it's state-by-state reciprocity, it's more qualifying conditions, it's protections for doctors that do this, right? I mean, I have my list and everybody knows it. So let's make sure that we continue with the media pressure on them, because the battle is far from over. And each little step that we make, I tell everybody, we can, and listen, we've been deemed essential medicine, right? That's not equity that I'm ever going to give up. And I'm not an attorney, and I don't want to play one on TV either. And there's a lot of lawyers and, you know, a lot of Jewish doctors and lawyers. I'm not one of them. But my point is, if you look at legal precedent, okay, once you've been deemed essential, I think, quite frankly, it's kind of hard to take it back. So let's continue to be vocal. I want to thank everybody for a fantastic session tonight. And Charles, good seeing you as well. And I can't wait to see everybody at events again, but this is a pretty good way to connect.
Great, great. I'm going to jump on to Elizabeth Thompson. Elizabeth, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'm really new to the whole cannabis space. And my role is I work within a marketing agency, and I want to be able to help businesses kind of get their messages and their products and their services out to people. But I know that there's a lot of regulation that kind of limits what we're able to do for them. And so I'm just trying to figure out what are some of the best reliable sources to kind of look at to be able to help people, but know that I'm not putting them in harm's way by trying to do something that, you know, the regulations just don't allow at this point.
Anybody want to take that?
I can answer. I mean, since you said you're in marketing, the Cannabis Marketing Association, that could be a place to start. They are having a summit in early June. I'm actually involved in a panel on that. It's a pretty newer organization, but they have some serious partners in the space, and you know, certainly on the marketing side, I think that would help you. And you know, the other thing is, when I got into it, I just kind of had to dig in, and it kind of depends in, you know, are you talking CBD? Are you talking, I mean, it kind of depends on what type of product. And I do enjoy reading Marijuana Moment every morning. That's a really must read for me. We actually support it. I'm sure most of the folks here may know about it, but it gives a really good overview of what's going on, you know, people who got FDA warning letters, people who just talked about cannabis. It also gives just a variety of things by state that happen. So it's a great newsletter. There's a lot of political information in there from all over the US. So I mean, really a lot of the trade pubs, I mean, certainly being involved in C-Lab, I think that there's always great stuff coming out of here as well too. So, and then certainly within that state that your product is based in, you know, obviously, can they ship it? Can they not? If it's, you know, CBD is obviously way different. So I think knowing your brand and your product, where they're based, and kind of what they're looking to do. I mean, I think those are probably the top things that come to my mind. I don't know if anybody else has any other, and certainly
I'd like to jump in and tell you the best thing you can do relating to that, because the laws relating to advertising for cannabis versus CBD and hemp are totally different, totally different. I would suggest that you reach out to, and there may be one on the phone on the call right now, but if not, I can always put you in touch with, or somebody can. You got to talk to an attorney. I mean, if you're going to represent a client as far as marketing and advertising, you better know what the laws are and what you can say and what you can't say, because when the ad goes out and it's wrong, they become liable and get fined. So my suggestion would be is to talk to a cannabis CBD attorney and find out what you can say and what you can't say and how you can say it. Next, Nicole, you're on, Nicole, there you go.
Hi, yes, thank you to the panel for being here, and thank you for CLAB for allowing FIU law students to be able to attend your events. My question goes to what Elizabeth Thompson was going to a little bit. So to piggyback on what she was asking, I'm more interested in like private platforms. So like if you wanna market a product and you're marketing on a private platform like Facebook or Instagram, if you say certain words, your ad gets taken down. So I don't know if any of the marketing people here have any workarounds that they know about that works to prevent that. I mean, I think that it's a good audience and you don't want to miss the audience in Facebook and Instagram. It's a younger audience. So any workarounds about that and what we're allowed to say and not to say. I know hemp, you're allowed to say CBD, but I guess when it gets to marijuana, they take down your ad. So anything on that regard will be helpful. Thank you.
I can answer that. If nobody, I certainly, we deal with it. There's not a one size fits all answer to that either. So there are a lot of workarounds, but it kind of depends on your product. So there's a big difference between CBD and obviously marijuana, and anything that you're paying for with an ad is incredibly difficult. So and then you run the risk of getting shadow banned, and there's just a lot that goes along with it. So I mean, I don't want to get into too much, but there are ways to advertise, but they're kind of in the old days. I'm saying the old days when they used to sell vitamins and pharmaceutical, like nutraceuticals and things like that, where because what happens is you don't want to be flagged. If your account is flagged, you have a lot of issues. And even if something is CBD, which is federally legal, right? It's federally legal. They can still take it down. So there's really no rhyme or reason, but what a lot of people do is if they are advertising, they create a different domain address for their product so that they're driving all of the ads to that. So you basically have a secondary website so that if it gets flagged and that domain name gets flagged, it's not your main your main bread and butter website. So, I mean, that's kind of a workaround but that can get shut down too. So it's continuing to evolve, and there really isn't a right way, but I can tell you anything with product actually in it is most likely going to get flagged. So a lot of companies have to look more lifestyle, more people instead of actually product, because the product images get flagged very, very quickly. I hope that's helpful, but it's constantly changing.
Great, thank you. Carrie, you want to jump on?
Hi, I think I'm unmuted.
You are.
The question is really about editorial timing. I used to write a column for Grow Talks in Green Profit magazine, and we worked out months in advance. This industry is changing so fast. I don't think that'll work. And the other part of the question is, how do you vet editorial? Because I still am constantly reading in mainline publications what I call cannabis. I mean, things that are just horticulturally, scientifically dead ass wrong, and you read them in print over and over and over again. How do you deal with that?
It's tricky because we have less and less fact checkers now at our disposal. And so we have to really trust that our journalists are checking facts and are being accurate. To answer the first part of your question with lead times, I think you're talking about, that is not an issue obviously online because we're immediate. For our print issue, we're about 3 months ahead. So if you pitch a news story for our print issue, it's usually not going to make it in because it's, we're working 3 or 4 months in advance. But back to how you source, you just hope that your sources are accurate. I check when I have facts that don't make sense, that don't add up or don't have a backup, then I double check them. But you really hope that your journalists are reporting factually accurate information. This is a tricky subject in this particular field because a lot of people make false claims about cannabis all the time, the health benefits of it. And so I tend to stay away from stories that are making sort of claims that haven't been substantiated by studies or reputable sources. I don't know. That was sort of a long answer to it's a complicated question, something I sort of deal with every day because I'm dealing with a lot of content and I want to make sure that what I'm putting out there has been vetted and is, and I'm not putting false information out there. I take it very seriously. But I'm also against a smaller staff than I have had in the past.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just agree with what Jonathan said there. I mean, we as editors or publishers or whatever, we have to look at every story with a healthy dose of skepticism. It's our responsibility. We're the keepers here. And if we put something out there that's fake or that's got something like it'll put a black eye on the industry. It'll hurt everybody. So we have a responsibility to make sure that if anything seems a little too outlandish or too crazy, I mean, obviously we're going to check everything, but something like that, we're going to double check. We're going to triple check. We're going to make sure that things line up right before we run it, especially in print. And to go along with what Jonathan said, on the print side, we're quarterly. So we come out 4 times a year. Our content in the print magazine has to be more evergreen. Yeah. Pun intended. And the more immediate stuff, then that's for the, the podcast or online. But yeah, it's tough out there because like Jonathan said, we don't have as big a staff as we would like, as many fact checkers and stuff.
Yeah, I know when we publish a story, you talk about the monthly newspaper, I'll publish a story and they, we'll get a title of somebody wrong, that they gave it to us wrong. It's, oh my God, he's not this, they're this. And it's like, that's it. Can't do anything about it. I can change it online, but the newspaper's done. Yeah. So it's very hard when you get information. Sometimes you even research it, but the people you're getting it from make a mistake. So that also becomes an issue too.
I think too, I've always, tried to bulletproof my stories, and it's really interesting in this space specifically because my editors they've never touched, the cannabis world at all. And I'm pretty much the only one at this legacy newspaper who's kind of venturing into this new world. And so I find myself going over my stories with an attorney almost every time because, our copy editors and our fact checkers even, don't know the intricacies of the cannabis market. And it is hard. And I've learned a lot over, I've made mistakes, you learn from them, but I found myself always going back to the attorneys that I know it better than I do.
I think we have time for maybe one more question, Amanda.
Yep, I would say one, or it looks like there's only 3 more left.
3 people. So if we can get some quick questions, quick answers, we can get through everybody. David, you want to jump up?
Hi there.
Hey, David.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the panel. We're new members, so appreciate us letting us join the club. We're investment bankers and investment managers in the space, so our interest is a little more business oriented. So I was just curious how business was real time down in Florida and what's going on. I was also curious when you guys think rec will be good to go in Florida, and I was also curious about the lawsuits that are winding their way through the courts. If you guys had any opinions on that stuff with the vertical licenses. So thanks a lot.
Samantha, you've been covering that like a hawk, so you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. The business kind of space, or I don't know, the growth of the cannabis business in Florida has been a little bit stalled. There are 22 licenses that are up for use and 13 are active. And so it's kind of been a fight to, attain those licenses. And so there is a case moving through the courts. The Flora Grown versus the Department of Health case is one that people are really focused on. They just had oral arguments virtually, which is very interesting. And so, it's hard to say. It was just oral arguments, so we'll see in a couple months where the Supreme Court comes down, and that would open up the market a lot because that addresses the vertical system that we have here in Florida. But in terms of recreational or adult use, there were 2 ballot initiatives this year that were pushing for adult use cannabis in Florida. One would have included homegrown and kind of broken down the vertical integration structure, and the other one would have kind of kept the structure as is. Both of them failed to make it onto the ballot this year, but I know that there's an effort for 2024 or 2022 for the midterm elections in 2022 to make that happen. But as you might have heard from some of our other panelists, we're kind of talking, or I think Dr. Gordon had mentioned, the legislature isn't as friendly to the idea, and it's definitely kind of a long fight for a lot of folks in the space. So I don't know if that helps, but yeah.
All right, I'm going to keep on jumping here. Heather, you want to come on?
Hi, I'm Heather. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you guys putting on this event. My question has to do with, I know that all of your publications have covered cannabis sustainability in some form, be it agriculturally or light grows. My question is more to, what about the end user aspect of cannabis sustainability?
What do you mean by that? What? They muted you here. Go ahead, continue.
Sorry, I had some technical difficulties. My question would be on StoryWise. If I wanted to pitch, I get a lot of feedback from the patients and end user consumers who have problems with they can't recycle things, cartridges. That's one example of sustainability that Florida, I know, has not addressed. And I know we're kind of in the middle, as Samantha stated, of a lot of other important legislative changes. So I guess my question would be, for a person who wanted to write more patient and consumer driven stories about sustainable cannabis and what we can do on our end besides regulatory changes, where would be the best sources to pitch those, or any of your publications have certain divisions for that particular area? Thank you.
Speaking for myself, I would, if there's an issue with product or something that's out there that you don't like or want something else, I'd be glad to take a look at it. Not a problem.
Yeah, I was going to say we have a sustainability section in every issue of Cannabis and Tech Today. So sustainability is kind of at the core. We think sustainability is actually innovative and strategic. So we love sustainability stories.
Yeah, companies that are doing it right with sustainability, new opportunities in the sustainability field would be something that we would cover.
Cree, I think I got that right. Is that right, Cree?
Yep, you got it.
There you go. You're out.
Got
Okay,
it right.
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. I am a co-founder of a tech startup. We're setting to launch our first product in December. And my question is around outreach for securing press coverage. What insight do you guys have around the best method to do that? Should we go directly to a PR firm, social media, LinkedIn via direct reporters? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Where are you located, Cree, first of all?
We're in Portland, but we're a Michigan-based company.
Oh, okay.
Temporarily.
Okay. Who wants to take that one? Doree, you want to take that one?
Sure. I think the answer is really D, all of the above, unfortunately. I mean, obviously you have to, you have to have the budget. If you're going to hire or spend money, you have to have enough budget. You want to have it make sense. So I think you just need to be very strategic in whatever you do decide to do, it's like you have to be all in. So if you can't be all in on all of those things, then I think you need to pick your top 1 or 2 things. Certainly, I'm a publicist, so I'm always going to say that I think that you've got one chance to launch. And I say that for any industry that I'm in with any product that we're launching. I mean, a relaunch really doesn't work. I mean, so in my mind, you've got one chance to do it and do it right. And, after that, it's pretty much old news. Certainly the journalists on the panel can advise on that, but we're always looking to provide new news or a new angle and new information. So I would say as part of a launch, you definitely want to announce it, but I would use probably several different vehicles to do that. Certainly social media, and publicity, but there are quite a few, and you don't have to do all of them. But the other great thing about PR is if you get that content and you get the coverage, certainly amplifying it and sharing it on your social. So it almost serves as content generation to be able to use that as well on your social media. So I hope that helps.
Can I add something real quick? This is like one of those life hacks, like one of these little nuggets that will help you guys. If you have a story or you want to get it out about your company or something like that, take a look, because writers and editors and publishers and PR people, a lot of them are on social media. Follow them. Go and like a couple of their things, create a social media relationship with, these people on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. I'm not talking about photobombing their family pictures and stuff like that. But when they're having a conversation about the industry out there, and you will see a lot of them, it's a really good way for you to just kind of, bring a little value, interject yourself into the conversation, get to know them. And that's a good way to, maybe get your story picked up or, your idea considered.
Great. Eric, last question, Eric. You're going to wrap this up.
Yeah, what's going on, Charles? And thanks, everybody on the panel. Was kind of just wondering what everyone's thoughts were on, if there's a story generally out there or that, something with physicians or whatever the case may be, what would be your suggestions as it relates to sending letters to the editor, reaching out to reporters that cover the stories? Is there a good place to find all those contacts for the majority of the LTs in your areas? Any suggestions on that, where maybe it's not specific to a company and getting the word out, but more related to maybe a subject matter?
I can answer. I hate
okay.
to always being the one talking. But, yes, I mean, there are always letters to the editor or snippets that you can write in, and it can either be in response to an article and you're, responding to that, or it could just be your viewpoint. So, I mean, certainly I'm in the business, so I have databases and whatnot, but just like what was said earlier, certainly engaging with those journalists. If you want an op-ed piece, that's handled very, very differently. It needs to be, in general, I'm giving you some generalizations, but it needs to be exclusive and follow a certain word count and the way it needs to be submitted. And, depending upon who you're submitting it to, they'll flat out say, and I'm sure Samantha can weigh in as well from the Herald side, but they'll say, if you don't hear from us in 5 business days, feel free to move on with your story and you can send it elsewhere. But it does need to be that you're sending it to one outlet. So it's kind of an exclusive, for lack of a better word, so that they have the right of first refusal. And if you don't hear from them after whatever they say on their website, because that's usually the best place as it relates to op-eds, then you can move on to a second and then do the same thing, and then a third, if you will. But they're pretty open to it now, kind of across the board. It doesn't just have to be daily newspapers. But again, you can also go with a bylined article, which doesn't have to be an op-ed. It can be just a bylined article, and usually they're about between, 700, 800 words-ish. Don't quote me on it, depends on the outlet. And that's it could just be a positioning on showing that you have thought leadership. So they're kind of different things for different opportunities, and if it's in response to an article that was run, that's certainly a little different than just providing thought leadership. So I'll turn it over. I don't know if Samantha has any or anybody else has any other insight on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Trey kind of put it exactly right. It's handled very differently in different newspapers. I know at the Miami Herald, it's very separate from the newsroom, the kind of editorial opinion section. There's also a firewall, so we have like advertising, opinion, and the reporters. So I think being in touch with the folks in the opinion section, knowing the right person to reach out to. Sometimes a general submission won't go as far as a personal email to the person who handles them. The Herald is pretty transparent. Nancy Ingram is our opinion editor. She's fantastic, and people know to reach out to her. But if you're pitching to a different publication, I definitely would suggest researching who's handling these things. I think you have a better chance of landing something. Sometimes people take a little poking, but I think it can often be successful. And if you're looking to pitch a reporter, obviously that's a different process. I think we've touched on that a bit. But
Anybody else?
I mean, it just comes out, do your research, know who you're pitching. Don't just do a blind pitch to everybody. Definitely become familiar with who you're pitching and kind of who you should be pitching at that.
And I think from a standpoint from the publication is really knowing if that publication is an advocate for what you're trying to do,
right?
And understand that maybe the editor or the writer relating to it is an advocate, because then your story is probably sold and done. But if you're trying to push something that they don't believe in or really doesn't really make sense to them, I think it's just never going to get out there. Anything else? No? Good.
I was just going to say thank you, everybody who participated in the panel tonight. Jonathan, Samantha, DeRay, Charles Squared. We really appreciate your time and energy participating in the panel. I want to thank all of our members and guests for joining us as well. Please stay tuned for some more regularly scheduled programming that will be coming your way. We did run over tonight. I was hoping to have a networking segment, but we did run over because the conversation was so great, so I didn't want to cut anybody off. If you need to go, please feel free to leave. You can leave the meeting. For anybody who wants to stick around, I will do a little fast networking session after this for anybody who wants to stay. But thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Samantha, by the
Thank
way,
you.
I sent you that information in your box. So.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. If I'll give everybody a few minutes, but to decide if they want to leave or not. If not, I'll probably just go around the room and start calling on people. If anybody wants to just say your name, a little bit about your company, and who you work for. And that way everybody can just get to know one another. Panelists, I know you guys have already dedicated your time. If you want to go, you're more than welcome to. Yes, please go. Please, you don't have to stay around for this portion. Thank you so much.
Just a heads up for anybody who is networking, you don't have to worry about it. We're done with the Facebook Live broadcast, so it's just us in the room here.
Fantastic. Todd, can you turn everybody's video and sound on, or do they need to do that themselves?
I can't. They have to do it themselves. That was a fun little tidbit we learned today.
Trial and error on these things.
So this is Frank. When I try to click on to turn on my video, I get a pop-up that says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Huh.
Ooh.
This is Eric. I got the same.
I don't know. It sounds like a dictatorship to me.
We're in jail.
I can try. I just asked you all to start your video. Hold on.
There you go.
Let's see.
Eric, call me tomorrow, Eric. You hear me?
Eric, we can't hear you.
Helps when you can hear me.
Eric, give me a call tomorrow if you would.
Yeah, I will. As it relates to the letters together, whatever they may be, I guess if it's coming from a certain voice in one area, and as Ray mentioned, targeting that in the one section, if there's a similar physician voice in another area, and those were going on at a similar time, I think maybe would you guys say that that would have more opportunity to create a bigger discussion on that issue? Or how do you keep that discussion going? If you wanted to have if a physician was going to write a letter to the editor in Miami, but there was another physician writing on a similar topic in Tampa, Orlando, and Tallahassee, is there a benefit to them doing that at different times, similar times, etc.?
I mean, I would say it depends on what it's about. If it's timely and it's about something that is current or being voted on or something super timely, then you need to do it right away, because then the media tends to move on to the next, story. But if it's just general, kind of general thoughts on it, then you have time. And, if you're writing to the local newspaper, then, in general, unless it's a sister outlet, they're not going to cover, it really doesn't, one doesn't really affect the other.
Yeah, for sure.
They syndicate it and run it elsewhere. So I think it's good to think about that strategy, and everything that you do is certainly looking at a strategy and making sure, okay, what's the plan here, instead of just haphazardly just sending stuff, but
right.
Something that's timely or in the press, or, something legal or whatever, certainly you have to hit it hard then when it's current. But I mean, obviously Samantha could probably weigh in much better than I can on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the more news, kind of like the wrong word, but like the more relevant to the story, the better. And I don't know. Was your question more about like?
No, you were breaking up.
You got a lot of background noise. If you're not talking, maybe you can just go on mute yourselves, and then just kind of watch the screen. That would help. Go ahead, Samantha.
Oh, I just wanted to ask Eric if there was another part of the question, because I don't know. I remembered the part about.
Yeah, it was kind of if a physician was writing a letter to the editor, they're not going to write it to 6 different papers and send it around to everyone. But if there was a group of different physicians writing about a similar topic, sending it around at a similar time that was timely, obviously that has potential to have more of an impact if more people cover that. Can you guys talk a little bit about some of the sister press organizations, just so that people have a little bit more clarity of what press and what different areas are linked up?
Well, let me say one thing, Eric. I'm going to jump out of cannabis for a second, and jump into the healthcare industry, which I've been covering for 18 years. If physicians have an organization that they're able to embrace, and have an organization come out with a statement, I think it goes a long, long way. For instance, I'm constantly getting information from the Florida Medical Association, the American Medical Association, Orthopedic Medical Association, the Emergency Room Medical Association. The problem is you got to have a voice. One voice itself, you may get some legs in a newspaper, but I think it's pulling it together as a group that really gives you a lot more oomph to be able to get a message across, especially with the cannabis docs. My personal opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
Which publications are linked? Is that what you were asking, Eric?
Yeah, well, I think, let's say there's 5 doctors that are in 5 different areas that all want to talk about the same thing, and are going to write a letter to the editor. Should they just do it on their own timing whenever they want? Is it better for them to be all sending it around at the same time so a similar conversation is going on? And then how is the links between a story that may be published more than once because of sister organization papers? Can you talk about